Welcome to the Construction Disruption Podcast, where we uncover the future of design, building, and remodeling.
I'm Todd Miller of Isaiah Industries, manufacturer of specialty metal roofing and other building materials. And today my co-host here on Construction Disruption is Ryan Bell. Ryan, welcome back to the show. How you doing today?
Hey, Todd. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well also. So hard to believe, but I think this is going to be episode 156. We are coming up close to 4 years of doing this show, and we are embarking right now, as you know, on what we are kind of calling season 3 of the show. And as part of season 3, just so our audience knows, we're going to change things a little bit. You're not going to see any dramatic change in terms of format or what we're doing, but we are going to focus more on guests who are of interest to folks in the home improvement industry, folks who are perhaps contractors, roofing contractors, metal roofing contractors, other types of home improvement contractors. And so we're going to try to cater our guests and what we talk about in our subjects a little bit more toward that audience. Doesn't mean it won't still be of interest to all of our other manufacturers and architects and developers and all the others who are part of our audience. But you are going to notice a little bit of a shift in terms of the type of guests we have on and the things that we talk about. And gosh, Ryan, you guys are going to put me in the hot seat here fairly soon on an episode, aren't you?
That's right. Looking forward to it.
I've never had that happen where you guys interviewed me, so we'll see how that goes.
First time for everything.
There you go.
Kind of like going to the orthodontist.
Why is it like going to the orthodontist? Tell me a little bit more.
Well, because there's a first time for going to that. And
okay.
It could be a little unpleasant.
Well, it'll be a peculiar experience, I am sure.
Yes.
Anyway, well, thank you. Well, let's go ahead and get rolling. Are you good to go?
Yes, let's dive in.
Good. Well, today's guest is someone who has an absolute wealth of knowledge and experience in construction and home improvement. Hailing originally from Eastern PA or Pennsylvania, someone told me the other day that Pennsylvania is the only state that we commonly refer to by its 2-letter abbreviation. And I got to thinking about it, and that's probably kind of true. So anyway, hailing originally from Eastern Pennsylvania, but having spent the last 40 years in Southern California, or SoCal, I guess as the kids call it. Charlie Gindele started his career with Alcoa Building Products, but then he transitioned or moved into the retail side of home improvement, including eventually the Renewal by Andersen replacement window program. Having worked mainly during his career in metal roofing, windows, and doors, over his 38 years of business ownership, Charlie's businesses did $425 million in retail sales. They completed 42,000 jobs, and his total employment during that time, God bless him, was about 1,300 people. That's pretty amazing. Now, Charlie retired in 2021, but he certainly hasn't slowed down. In fact, I see him out there and out and about more now than I did when he was active in his businesses, but he now does business coaching, including sales and business planning training, and he's written 3 books. His books are available on Amazon. We'll put them in the show notes, but his books are Lessons Learned, My Journey from Contractor to Businessman, Build It to Last, a memoir, and More Lessons Learned, How to Accelerate the Growth of Your Home Improvement Business. Throughout the year. This is where I see him out there on the road a lot. Charlie speaks at numerous conferences, and he also serves on some nonprofit boards there in his area of San Clemente, California. He is a coach for the Wealthy Contractor Success Society, has been involved as the leadership of Certified Contractors Network, or CCN as we call it, and he was recognized by Dave Yoho and his group in 2023 as a legend of the home improvement industry. Charlie, that is quite a biography, and I really only hit a few of the high points. Welcome to Construction Disruption. It's a pleasure to have you as our guest today.
Yeah, Todd, thanks for having me, and it's great to see you and Ryan, and look forward to our conversation.
Very good. Well, thank you. Well, so If you can think back to a bit over 40 years ago, you had a good career that was started with Alcoa Building Products, but actually right out of college, I think you actually had started a home improvement company, and then you went into the manufacturing side of things. But then a few years later, you chose to leave the corporate world and pursue once again the retail side of things. I'm just kind of curious, what was it? Your career could have taken a lot of different paths. What was it that really attracted you to the home improvement industry?
Well, I tell people I've been in this business almost my entire life, and that's pretty true. My dad was a fire captain in the city of Philadelphia, and like most policemen and firemen back then, they didn't make much money, and they all had second or third jobs. And my dad worked for a contractor. So when I was about 10, 11 years old, he started taking me out on Saturdays or weekdays during the summer when I was off from school. And I started working for him doing roofing, siding, insulation. And I kind of started as a gopher, go for this, go for that. And then I strapped the tool belt on and start climbing ladders. And I think, at an early age, I loved to stand back and look at what I had done that, over the last 8 hours or 10 hours or whatever. And a lot of times a homeowner made a positive comment, and that was, really icing on the cake. So I loved working with my hands. I loved building and creating things. And so I did that, at an early age. When I was in high school, my dad was having a new house built, and I worked for the builder for 3 summers on a little housing project he had nearby. And when I got into college, I didn't really have a job. And then a friend of mine's father was putting aluminum siding on his house. And I said, let me give you a bid. And I gave him a bid, and he gave me the job. And that was the first job that I did. And that led to other jobs. And so I literally had a home improvement business while I was in college. And then when I got out of college, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And I had backlog of jobs, and I kept doing that for about 3 or 4 years. So, I've been doing it literally since I was 10 years old.
That is an amazing story. Yeah, you had the nail pouch and the tool belt on at a pretty young age there. Well, I'm kind of curious. So thinking back to 1980s, early 1980s, mid 1980s, Southern California, I think it was a market that everyone was kind of had their eye on and wondering, what the potential might be. Does anything really stand out to you about the potential that existed in Southern California at that time that kind of, caused you to settle out there and start your business? And I'm kind of curious, do you still see that potential today? Has it changed? Has it morphed a little bit?
So back in the early 80s, I was working for Alcoa Building Products, and at the time I was staff engineer, and I was doing a lot of technical type work and a lot of training. And we had this aluminum product called Country Cedar Shake, and it was really designed to be a sidewall product. And we sold a lot of it in Long Island, New York, and we sold some mansard roofs and some light commercial type buildings. And back then, Kaiser had aluminum shingle that they made, and they had a lot of dealers in Texas and Oklahoma. And I think it was 1979, Kaiser decided to get out of the building products business, and they kept making the aluminum shingle. And then 1980, they all of a sudden they decided to get out of that. And all of a sudden, our district managers were calling us into our office in Pittsburgh saying, hey, we want to sell some of this Alcoa Country Cedar Shake. And, we had the product, but that's all we had. We didn't really have a roofing system and the components and accessories. So I started getting involved, and I went down to Texas and Oklahoma and some of those markets where they were selling the Kaiser product, and started talking to these guys. And, they really knew their stuff, and we didn't have a complete system. So I started learned a lot from them, started working on valley flashings and gable end flashings and starter strips and things like that. And we eventually built a roofing system, and we started to have some success there. And about 1981 or 82, I made a trip out here to Southern California. I'd never been to California before. Movie stars and swimming pools and TV shows and all that. And what I found was everywhere I looked, there were wood shake and wood shingle roofs. So a home either had a tile roof or it had a wood shake or wood shingle roofs. the fiberglass shingles pretty much didn't exist then. They were some old asphalt composition shingles, and a lot of the neighborhoods didn't allow those. So I was just, we knew that from Texas and Oklahoma, the big market was replacing wood shingle roofs. But we came out here, and this made Texas, seem like minuscule everywhere I looked. And so I was excited about, getting the market off the ground for Alcoa, and saw an opportunity, but we didn't have any distribution here. And so I started talking to potential distributors, and most of them weren't interested in getting into a metal roofing product, and tried to find dealers. And the dealers I wanted to work with didn't want to work with us. The dealers I didn't want to work with wanted to work with us. And finally, after a couple of years of spinning my wheels, I just said, to hell with it. I want to cover Southern California with aluminum roofing. And I, resigned from the business, moved out here in April of '84. And, within about 3 years, we were, if not the largest, one of the largest Alcoa roofing dealers in the country. And we continued to grow that for about 15, 16 years. And in that time, we did 3,800 residential re-roofs, and built systems, and built a sales team and installation teams. And, it was quite a ride. But the main thing was that there were wood shake and shingle roofs everywhere. And that was 41 years ago. Today, that doesn't exist. The wood shake and wood shingle roofs are pretty much all gone. They've been replaced. Most of the cities now have Class A fire ratings, and it's almost impossible, not impossible, but almost impossible to get a Class A rating. And there's still a few niche markets where, because of aesthetics and tradition, they'll still allow wood in there. And then we ran hard with it for about 15 years. But what we saw in the late 90s was the advent of a lot of relatively lightweight, non-combustible roofing products, like lightweight concrete tile and some synthetic products. And then also the advent and the acceptance of Class A fire rated, composition shingles,
right,
presidential and the laminated shingles and those things, and they became more and more accepted. So the marketplace really changed over the time.
It really has, and it's interesting. I mean, it's still a great market, but products kind of morph and change, and suddenly other things come up. So, just speaking, though, about Southern California, I really want to get into the meat of advice you have for business owners today. But I do want to ask you about the Southern California rebuilding after the recent tragic fires, the Palisades and Altadena fire and others. Couple of episodes ago, interestingly, we had an architect from Southern California, a gentleman by the name of Peter De Maria, on the show. And Peter actually also has gotten into manufacturing modular construction, modular homes. But he talked a little bit about what his thoughts were as far as the rebuilding from the fires, what the timeline might look like, maybe what some construction trends and things might look like. Kind of curious to see what your thoughts are on that as far as, what the future might hold.
Well, I could tell you, living here back in January when those fires broke out, and the previous weekend they had forecasted really high winds, so didn't sneak up on anybody. They said we're going to have, the worst winds we've had in 10 or 15 years, and they were that, and then some. They started like on a Tuesday afternoon, and it was unbelievable. The firemen didn't have a chance. 80, 90, 100-mile-an-hour winds. They could have had every fire truck and firemen available and all the water available they needed. And the winds were just horrific. There was no way they were going to be able to stop that, let alone contain it quickly. And I was reading an article recently, and they're estimating that there's a little over 18,000 structures and or homes that were destroyed. 18,000.
Wow.
I mean, that's an incredible number. And right now, I mean, here it is, 3 months later, 4 months later, and they're still figuring out what they're going to do with all the debris and the toxicity, and there's automobiles involved in that. There's thousands of cars have been destroyed, and businesses, and people are relocating down here to Orange County, where I am, 60 miles south, because there's just no housing available up there. A friend of mine was moving out of the area, and he put his house for lease, and he leased it like overnight for 3 years at an unbelievable rate to someone who was displaced from their home in LA. And, is this well-to-do person. But so anyway, it's horrific. I don't see that 10 years from now. I don't see the place being rebuilt. In 93, I think it was, we had a fire in Laguna Beach, and it destroyed about 300 homes, came down Laguna Canyon, and I mean, 12 years later, they still weren't done. That was 300 homes. We're talking about 18,000, so it's going to be a real challenge, and it's just terrific if you see the pictures from up there and you drive around. So I just don't see that thing in maybe 20, and probably not in our lifetimes will that place be back to normal, if ever.
Yeah. Maybe Ryan's lifetime, but probably not you and me.
Yeah.
No, and that's pretty much what the architect we spoke with had said too. He said it's going to be years and years, and talked about some of the very same things that you talked about. One of the stories I'm seeing come out a lot, and I actually spoke about a week ago with a homeowner who was right on the edge of the Altadena fire. In fact, he said one house beyond his burned and everything beyond that burned. And so he felt very fortunate, but he said the heat had done things to his house, plus embers that landed on his house caused damage. So he's having to replace a lot of things, despite the fact that everyone looks at his house and says, gee whiz, you survived, which he's felt very blessed by, but he's still having to do a lot of work to the home also. So I know that, again, you just did a tremendous job when you moved to Southern California with the Alcoa roofing program. And, after a number of years, you also started to get into gravitating more toward replacement windows. Just kind of curious. I mean, are replacement windows still a solid opportunity in Southern California? And are there any other replacement products you see kind of potentially coming on strong out there?
Well, yeah, replacement windows are still really going strong. I mean, the market pretty much didn't exist in 1990, 1989. It was a new market. I was actually approached by a guy that was the GM of Alcoa Building Products distributor, and he was going to start fabricating vinyl windows, and he approached me. He said, you guys have done a good job marketing and selling a high-end retail, home improvement product with the aluminum roofing. You ought to think about windows. And I was like, windows, dual pane windows, Southern California? Because I guess I had that East Coast mentality. I mean, winters are cold, but out here, the climate's relatively mild, and comparatively speaking. And but we test market it with some of our roofing customers. And after about 6 months, sold about 20, 25 jobs, figured out how to install them in stucco walls and things like that. And it took off. And, then there was an influx of a ton of manufacturers that started making vinyl dual glazed windows in Southern California. And every Tom, Dick, and Harry was getting into the business. I remember back in the mid-90s, going into the Orange County Register newspaper on a Saturday morning, the Home and Garden page, and there were like 20 ads for guys selling replacement windows. Newspapers are gone away now, but they're still all online. But the market has matured quite a bit. But one thing that I did see was, in early 90s, California passed Title 24 Energy Code. And what that did is effectively outlawed aluminum single glazed windows, which are what most of the builders put in back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And so all the builders, to meet the code, start going to dual glazed vinyl windows. And they, of course, put the cheapest window they could put in there. And we noticed about 10 years ago that there was a new market, and that was all these cheap builder grade vinyl windows failing. And we started selling now by then I'd become Renewal by Andersen. We started selling our Fibrex composite windows, and we built processes to replace those builder grade vinyl windows. So that market is still going strong. I mean, there's still tens of thousands of windows that need to be replaced. And a lot of those early vinyl windows, whether new construction or replacement, are failing. But over and above that, I this one day bath thing is really
Oh yeah.
going. I see a ton of people getting into that one day bath, and to me it's a little deceptive. They're not really remodeling the bath; they're just doing a new bathtub. Most of them don't do anything else, but that seems to be something that's attractive. Outdoor living here in Southern California is big, and I know it is in a lot of other areas of the country. And some of these pergolas that guys are developing with, they have louvers that open and close on the top. So you can close it when it's raining and open it when the sun's out. And then something we saw in our business, and it's still a big trend, I think a lot of big upside, is what we call big doors. These big multi-glide doors or these folding doors. And
sure.
And, there a lot of the higher end homes are putting them in. People see them in magazines, and they're very sexy. The problem is that most of the older homes aren't built with the big openings. So now you get into a ton of remodeling combining 2 or 3 openings into one big opening with a new header and sometimes new footers. And I mean, some of these jobs are $70,000, $80,000 projects to put a 20-foot wide by 10-foot high folding or multi-glide door in. So, I see that as being a big opportunity also.
Yeah, interesting. No, I agree. And those are beautiful where I see those movable walls and things. Yeah. So it's interesting. This is like a trip down memory lane for me a little bit here, Charlie. But so my wife and I still live in one of Don Snyder's old houses there in Sydney. Okay. And we actually put a motorized pergola on the back of our, over the back patio a couple years ago. And I could talk a lot about those. The products are maybe a little bit oversold, but it's still pretty cool and caught some attention. So I have to ask you, the gentleman you were talking about from Alcan, are we both thinking of Eric Hahn?
Yeah, Eric Hahn. Yep.
Who was his sidekick? Tommy LaManna?
Tommy LaManna was the sales manager.
Yeah.
Tom's retired, and I think Eric last I heard he was in Australia.
That's what I heard too. Yeah. I've got a funny story about, I think it was Eric. So I'm working a home show with these guys, and they're pitching, a homeowner comes through, or maybe as a contractor, but they're pitching vinyl siding. And Eric is showing how tough and resilient it is. And he takes a piece of this, and in his excitedness, he whacks it across the back of a wooden folding chair that was in our booth, and the siding just crumples. I mean, it just fully folded 90 degrees. So Eric tosses it over the back of the display and just keeps on going. But that's my best Eric Hahn story.
Yeah, well, Eric is largely responsible for me getting into the window and door business.
I remember that. Yep, I remember that. Good guys. Well, I'm kind of curious. So, as you continued with your career and your businesses, you were involved originally with the Dial 1 program and then the RBA Renewal by Andersen program. What do you see as benefits to those, who are selling replacement products? What are the benefits to being involved with a national program such as those or maybe others? And is that something you would generally suggest that contractors consider?
Yes and no. I mean, it can be a good thing. It can also be not a good thing. I got involved with Dial 1 in 1993. They approached me, and I didn't know the whole history of Dial 1 at the time, but Dial 1 was started in the 80s by some of the same folks that started Century 21 Real Estate back in the 70s. And if you think back to the 1970s, there was no brand name realtor in your marketplace or even in the country. There was just all these little mom and pop type realtors. And these guys had this idea that if they created a brand name identity and systems and processes in the real estate market, that, they could really grow the thing. And so they went around to realtors and started getting them to sign up and take the Century 21 banner on. They started doing a lot of national advertising. And so when you moved around in your city, your town, or across state or across country, you look for a Century 21 realtor. And it became enormously successful and became copied also in the real estate industry many times over. So some of these guys branched off, and they were looking at a similar type of marketplace, and they settled on the home improvement property services type business, and they came up with the idea named Dial One. And the idea was they would have a bunch of Dial One franchisees in a given market, and they were all complementary. And so if your furnace went out and you called a Dial One HVAC guy come out, he'd show up in the uniform and be polite and courteous, and the billing was fair and honest, and the warranty. And if you had a good experience and then you had a leak in your roof, you'd be inclined to call a Dial One roofer. If you needed, you wanted to have your bathroom done over, or you need landscaping. So, and the name Dial One came from dial one number for all your needs. And the concept was really solid, but they were never really able to make the thing stick. It was what they call a conversion franchise, where you're taking an existing business and converting it to a Dial One franchise. And a lot of these guys were in my market were small tradesmen. They were good plumbers and electricians, but they were not good business people. They didn't really have much marketing savvy or sales savvy. And so it was this, they weren't able to self-sustain it. But they approached me, and they had an influx of venture capital. They had a new management team, and they painted this picture of having 2,000 franchisees in 30 major metropolitan areas in the United States by the year 2000. And I felt like if they could do what they said they could do, and I could do what I thought I could do, that the synergistic effect would really be better than I could do on my own. So we got involved in that and re-identified our company and painted our trucks and relogoed and put our guys in uniforms and everything. And for the first year or so, it was really going well, but I guess they weren't hitting their sales goals, and the venture capitalists pulled the funding plug on them. And all of a sudden, about late 1995, early 1996, it went away. A great concept, not able to sustain it. But we kept flying the Dial One flag because we had re-identified, and we became known as Dial One. And all the little Dial One guys loved me because I was running full page ads and really built the Dial One brand. And then come along in the early 2000s, 1995, Andersen Corporation started a division called Renewal by Andersen, which was their custom-made, made-to-order replacement window division. And they stumbled and fumbled with that for the first 5 or 6 years, but they started to get some traction. And they approached me in the early 2000s about being the Dial One or the Renewal by Andersen affiliate here in Orange County. And we went back and forth for a while, but finally in beginning of 2005, we switched over to Renewal by Andersen, becoming the Renewal by Andersen affiliate. We kind of phased out of the cafeteria approach we had for the other windows and doors. And it was a major change. It was kind of like blowing up my company and starting all over again. It was kind of like,
I bet,
turning the thermostat up to a temperature that was pretty darn high. But anyway, we figured it out, and we started to have success. Had to kind of rebuild my sales team, and we grew that quite a bit. And then in 2013, one of the bigger dealers from the East Coast, Renewal by Andersen, approached me about partnering with him, and we got, in addition to Orange County, we got Riverside County, San Bernardino County, and LA County. And we really grew the business to the point that in 2019, Renewal by Andersen Corporate bought the business from us because their model's always been about 10% of the locations are company owned and the rest are all independently owned. And they had no company owned locations on the West Coast. So they wanted the LA market because the LA market has more single family homes than any other market in the country. And we sold the business to Renewal by Andersen Corporate, and I stayed on for 3 years as the general manager. And then by the time I left at the end of 21, retired, the whole LA market, we were doing about, 85, $90 million in residential replacement windows with Renewal by Andersen. And it's grown from there.
That is a story. Good stuff.
So I guess to answer your question, though, there are some brand names and franchises that are well worth investing in. If you get with the right one, I definitely would recommend that. On the other hand, some of them can kind of limit you and lock you down. And so I just would urge anybody who's thinking about that to kind of look before you leap and, do your due diligence and talk to some other existing franchisees or licensees and make sure it's really what you want.
Well, wise advice. Sounds good. Well, I know that in your books, you talk a lot about lessons learned. And yeah, we all have those stories. I'm curious, what are a couple of the major lessons learned that you share in your books that might interest our audience?
Yeah, well, the number one lesson that I learned, and I think people need to learn if they don't know it, is you got to run your business by the numbers, and you got to know the numbers of your business. And too many people get into these businesses and they're focused on selling jobs and producing jobs, but they don't know the right price to sell them at. They really don't know what their overhead is. They don't know what their cost of goods sold are. They don't know what their gross profit is. They're not doing monthly P&L financials. They're not accounting on the accrual basis versus the cash basis. And so as I've learned these lessons and shared these with many people over the years through training and all, I'll put this out there. If you're going to be in the home improvement remodeling business, you need to be operating at least a minimum of 50% gross profit. And that means you take your revenue and you subtract your cost of goods sold, and cost of goods sold should be the material, the labor, and the commission on the job. And you subtract your cost of goods sold from your revenue, and you got to have at least a minimum of 50% gross profit to be able to pay for marketing and lead generation and admin and build a team, and then also make a minimum of 10% bottom line and hopefully closer to 15 or 20% bottom line. A lot of people don't believe you can make that, but I know my business, as well as a lot of other businesses, are making that month in and month out. So a lot of that goes into the mindset of, but you got to know the number of your business. That's definitely number one. Another key thing I think is around culture, company culture. Every business has a culture, whether you consciously are aware of it or not. And the definition I heard years ago, which I really think sums up company culture is all the positive behaviors that you acknowledge, you encourage and reward, minus the negative behaviors that you tolerate and allow. And I talk to so many people and they have problems, and it's related to the fact that they tolerate and allow negative behavior, whether it's on the sales end, production end, whatever. And they don't encourage and reward and acknowledge the positive behaviors. So if you really think about that, it's a pretty simple formula. But your company is whatever it is, your culture is whatever it is. And a lot of people just let those negative behaviors, they allow them and they tolerate them. And then I think the other thing I would say that's really important is to become a student of marketing, because these businesses are all about lead generation. And I've got a friend of mine that's in Colorado, and he's been in the business like me many years. And he says, nothing scares me in this business except for no leads or a lack of leads. So in order to combat that and not be in that position, you got to become a student of marketing. And something I've seen, a phenomenon in the last 3 or 4 years, Todd, is that during COVID, right? COVID, after 3 months into COVID, when people started to deal with it and all, and people were trapped in their homes and couldn't go on vacations or couldn't buy cars or whatever, the phone started ringing for home improvement and remodeling contractors, and there was a groundswell of business. And during that time, leads were falling out of the sky. and people that weren't successful were having success. And so the byproduct of that has been that a lot of people have become what I call lazy marketers, where their marketing is almost all passive, and they stopped, active or proactive type marketing. And there's a lot of people have morphed into the digital space exclusively. So, they got a website, they've done search engine optimization, they're doing their pay-per-click, they're doing their Google local ad services type stuff. They're buying leads from lead aggregators, things like that. But it's very passive stuff. And, so doing direct mail, doing canvassing, doing event marketing, marketing to your past customers, doing retail type marketing, things of that nature, where instead of sitting back and waiting for the leads, you go out and get them, you go out and make them. That's the big difference right now in 2025 between the people that are growing their businesses and have leads and the people that don't. The other thing is a lot of people that I see a lot of financials of companies, they're not spending the money they should spend on marketing. If you think of all the market leaders, either regionally or nationally in the home improvement remodeling business, these people all have spent their way to the top through marketing. And I talk to people that are spending 3 and 4 and 5%, of their revenue on marketing, and they're okay, but they're not really growing their business. And they, and you wind up hitting a glass ceiling where you look up and you see all the potential business there is, but you're not growing because your marketing spend is limiting that. So to me, you got to spend 10, 12, 15% of your revenue on marketing. And then people say, well, I can't afford that. Well, you can't afford it if you pay for it and your customers don't pay for it. So you got to build that into your in your selling price, and your customers will pay for it. But that's a big thing. People underspending and not becoming students of marketing, and actually becoming lazy marketers, where you sign up with a company, you give them a credit card or a monthly budget, and then you sit back and wait for them to generate leads. And so there's a lot of areas where you can grow your business by making marketing the most essential part of your business.
That is a wealth of advice right there in those 3 lessons learned. Know your numbers, keep an eye on that culture, and that's a great equation of what culture is, and marketing and avoiding lazy marketing. Our last guest on our last episode is a gentleman by the name of Marcus Sheridan. Marcus wrote the book, They Ask You Answer, and his new book is Endless Customers. But fascinating talking to him about how he is advising and showing companies how to use AI to help with their marketing. And it really isn't lazy marketing the way they're doing it. It's pulling them in pretty deep with people, and it's cool stuff.
Yeah, I'm familiar with They Ask You Answer book. I mean, he's a very smart guy. He definitely understands it.
Yeah, he sure does. It's kind of funny, though, as you were sitting there talking about lazy marketing and how people can fall into that trap. Back in probably the 80s, there was a series of books, you probably read them too, called Guerrilla Marketing.
Yes.
And those really had an impact on me, because they taught me that you got to keep that edge constantly to figure out where that next lead is coming from.
Yeah, you can't get into a comfort zone, and too many people do,
Yep, good stuff. Well, Charlie, you are certainly recognized as a major thought leader in the home improvement industry. I'm kind of curious, who are others out there, though, that you would suggest people listen to and pay attention to?
Well, a good friend of mine, Brian Gottlieb, some people know Brian. I mean, Brian was Tundraland and Renewal by Andersen up in Wisconsin, and Brian sold those. He was also, I think, in the bath business in Arizona. Brian sold his business, and he's kind of been on some of the same lecture tour, talking tour that I've been on. And he wrote a book last year called Beyond the Hammer, which is a great book, and a lot of people have read it. But if you haven't read Beyond the Hammer, pick it up and read it. So Brian's out there on Facebook. If you go to Facebook, I mean, friend Brian, and Brian's a really smart guy, very future forward thinking type of person. Another person that I think I would advise people to become familiar with if they're not already is Brian Kaskavalciyan. Brian's had G4 Marketing, and he's also the Wealthy Contractor. And he does his Accelerate Live conference every February. This year he had like 450 companies there down in Jacksonville, Florida, Amelia Island. Brian also started a thing a couple of years ago called the Success Society. And it's a group of people that meet 3 times a year in person. And then every month there's coaching calls and mastermind calls and really people that are focused on, being profitable and making that 15 to 20% bottom line. And so I definitely would recommend people follow Brian Kaskavalciyan. And then the last one that has made an impact in the home improvement business and remodeling business, working with a lot of contractors, is a fellow named Shawn Feurer out of Utah. And Shawn is into the mindset aspect of Shawn and his dad were contractors. Shawn has his own consulting business now. And, this thing between our ears that stops our 2 ears from touching talks us into stuff and talks us out of stuff all day long. And a lot of it has to do with our mindset. The glass is half empty, the glass is half full. I mean, one of my favorite quotes of all time is from Henry Ford, and it's, if you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you can't. Either way, you're right. So Shawn is working with a lot of contractors to help them with their mindset, because a lot of times we have these belief systems that are very self-limiting. And, we don't think we're worthy. We don't think we're capable of. We don't think we deserve it, whatever. And cracking the code and getting through that and realizing that, whatever we do, it's up to us, it's, and not limiting ourselves. And so Shawn Feurer is Feurer Consulting. So I would say Brian Gottlieb, Brian Kaskavalciyan, and Shawn Feurer are 3 of the leading guys today. If you want to grow your business, if you want inspiration, if you want tactics, if you want to, take your business and your life to the next level, they would be 3 guys that I'd want to follow online and get involved with and reach out to them. They're all great people, and I know they'd all be happy to talk to anyone.
Well, very cool. And I was not familiar with Shawn, so I wrote his name down there and going to learn more about him as well. So thank you. Those sound like great advice there. Well, Charlie, thank you so much. This really has been a great discussion. We're so thankful for your time. We're close to wrapping up what we kind of call the business end of things. Anything we haven't covered today that you wanted to be sure to share with our audience?
One thing I think is really important is, and Jim Collins in the book Good to Great talks about the companies that went from good to great all identified their hedgehog concept. Mm-hmm. And you can read the book to find out why he calls it the hedgehog concept. But basically, the hedgehog concept is where 3 circles intersect. And the number one is, what can you be the best at? The number 2 circle is what drives your economic engine. What can you make money doing? And number 3 is, what are you deeply passionate about? And so finding the place in the business world where those 3 intersect for your individual business, I think is key. And when I look at how I transitioned from the aluminum roofing to the windows to Renewal by Andersen, it was because my hedgehog concept was changing and being aware of that. When I look back in retrospect, I see that happening. I didn't realize it at the time, but I fell in love and out of love with things. Certain things drove my economic engine, and they didn't no longer drive my economic engine, and other things did. And then really, what can you be the best at? Not, because there's where you want to be in this business, in my mind, is you want to be the premium price leader in your market. You don't want to be the middle of the road, and you can never be the low price leader, because there's always somebody willing to sell it for less than you are and go out of business sooner than you are. So becoming the premium price leader, charging the right price, which is generally going to be the highest price or one of the highest prices for what it is you do in your market, and then being able to go out and educate, differentiate, and build value with every customer, having a sales process and making marketing essential in your business. All those things I think are the things that people should be focused on if they want to not just sustain your business, but grow your business and flourish it. And when you do it right, and believe me, I didn't always do it right from day one, but I learned those lessons, and it for me personally, it gave me a very gratifying life, a very prosperous life, and making money and doing things way beyond what I ever thought I could have done, 41 years ago when I moved out here to start a business. So, but they would be the key things. And I put a lot of those in my 2 books, the 2 lessons learned book. And there's a lot of other detail in there that people could get things from. But I would think that's the big thing is becoming the premium price leader in your market, knowing what your headshot concept is, charging the right price, and then knowing the numbers of your business, and build a great culture.
Fantastic advice. Great advice for anybody, especially who may be starting out in their career or in a business, or good stuff. Thank you. Well, we are ready to ask you if you're willing to participate in something we do on every show called our rapid fire questions. So these are 7 questions. You don't know what we're about to ask, but all you have to do is give your quick answer to them. Are you up to the challenge of rapid fire, Charlie?
Yeah, sure. Let's do it.
I knew you would be. You wouldn't be an entrepreneur if you weren't. Well, Ryan, you want to ask the first question?
Yes, I'd love to. Question number 1, what is something you have purchased or acquired in recent memory that was a game changer for you?
Yeah, for me, it was an automobile that I bought about 2 years ago. Some people may know Dave Kindig from Bitchin' Rides TV show, and he's in Salt Lake City, and he builds he styled this car after a 1953 Corvette, and I'm a big car guy, and I was able to buy the 9th car that he made of this. He calls it a CF1. The body's all carbon fiber. And I traded 8 cars to get this car.
Wow.
And so it was an expensive car. And I sometimes thought I was crazy, but there's a couple other versions of it that have sold at some of these high-end auctions for twice what I paid for it.
Wow.
So it's a game changer for sure. And it's an incredible car. People to see it just kind of go crazy over it.
Well, I've seen some of your social media posts with some vets and things. So I'm going to check out the CF1 though and see what that's all about. Cool.
Yeah, just go to Kindig Designs and look up the CF1. And he's built about 18 of them now. He builds about 4 or 5 a year.
That's pretty cool.
Well, question number 2, if you could be any fictional character for a day, what fictional character would you choose to be?
I don't know, maybe Superman.
There you go.
I could see myself flying around with that red tape.
That'd be kind of fun, wouldn't it?
It certainly would. Faster than a speeding bullet.
Yeah, right.
Good answer.
Question number 3, what's one thing on your bucket list that you haven't done yet?
I want to go to Italy and Switzerland, and never been there. And I just, want to do a little more traveling. And my wife likes to be at home, and I like to travel. So, but yeah, I definitely like to. A lot of friends have gone to Italy, and I'm just jealous of them, So
yeah,
I'd love to spend a month or 2 in Italy. I think that would be on my bucket list.
You'd be surprised how many times that comes up on this show. At least recently it has. My oldest stepdaughter is actually studying abroad over there right now, and she loves it and wants to live there.
Yeah, I just see the photos and hear the stories, and I've seen a few movies that are set over there in Tuscany and all, and I just say I want to be there.
Awesome. Next question. If you could only eat one food for the rest of your life, what food would you choose to eat?
That's easy. Filet mignon.
Well, there you go. That's a good answer.
Medium.
So do you put a crust on it or just a filet? No crust on top or anything?
Yeah. There's a lot of ways to prepare it, and
sure.
Variety is the spice of life. But if I had to pick one food, it would be a filet mignon, and then prepare it in multiple ways. Yeah, definitely. But there's nothing better than a good filet mignon.
I hear you.
Question number 5. What's something you think everyone should experience at least once in their life?
See, that's a complicated question. Well, I think everyone should experience a true love, an unconditional love, and someone that they can receive it from, and someone that they can give it to. A lot of people are in love and in relationships, but having an unconditional love where you can say anything, do anything, and you won't be judged, and you can give that in return to that person, I think is something that people should experience. So a lot of people are fortunate to have done that, but not everybody is.
It's a good answer.
And that's a game changer.
Good answer. Okay, well, we're going to switch back for this next question, sort of into business mode a little bit. What is a great practice, in your opinion, to help gain the trust of a homeowner during the sales process?
I think it's a mindset of that we don't sell anything. Our mindset is we help people buy things. We help people, and no one likes to be sold anything, but people love to buy. I mean, you don't pull into the driveway and your neighbor comes over and say, look at this new car that the guy at the dealership sold me, but with your chest out, you say, look at the car that I just bought. Right. And too many people in sales, I think, are, in the sales business where sales is something you do to people, right? It almost sounds manipulative. And a lot of sales processes are taught to be manipulative. But I think having the mindset that we don't sell anything, but we help people buy things. And I've been across the table from homeowners, and they're nervous, and they're, and I kind of put them at ease and say, John and Mary, look, I hope you don't think I came out here to sell you new windows and doors today, because that's not what we do. And they look at you like strange, like, what are you doing here? No, we don't sell windows and doors. We help people buy windows and doors. And I came out here at no cost today to see if I could help you. And maybe I can and maybe I can't. But in order to help you, I want to ask you some questions and appreciate your honesty in answering those. And so doing a really good needs assessment, and then a really good walk around and inspection, but all with the mindset of helping people buy, not selling them anything.
I love that. And I always put it this way. I say, everything changes when that salesperson realizes that what they're doing is not to benefit themselves, but to benefit the customer. And that just changes everything.
Zig Ziglar said it well. If you help enough other people get what they want, you'll get what you want.
Yep.
But too many times people go in there with commission breath, and the people feel it and see it all over them, and it turns the customer off, So, and nowadays with social media and every customer has a megaphone, to blast their comments out to the world. I think it's that much more important, that we have adopt that mindset of helping people buy versus selling them things.
Very good. Final question here. We'll end on kind of a serious note. Other than being known for having an awesome car, what would you like to be remembered for at the end of your days?
I think it's very simple. I want the world to, I want the people around me and the people I interact with think that, the world's a little bit better place because I passed through it, because I touched them, I helped them, I made a difference. And, to me, that's the biggest testimony. Some people have a bigger stage to do it than others, but I mean, everybody. And if everybody made the world a little bit better, that'd be a heck of a lot better world than we have now, right? So, I just think if you're known for you made a difference, a positive difference in the lives of other people, in a community, in an industry, whatever, then I think that's a life well lived.
Amen. Great note to wrap up on, and I knew you'd have a great comment, so that's the reason we ended with that one. Well, thank you again for your time today. Can you share with us, for folks who may want to get in touch with you or learn about your business coaching and things that you're doing, what are some of the best or easiest ways for them to connect with you, Charlie?
Yeah, so I have a website. It's charliegindele.com. That's CharlieGindele.com. And my email is charlesd charles.gindele, Gindele, the number 1 at gmail.com. So charles.gindele1 at gmail.com. And, I can they go into Facebook. I have a place on Facebook, and they can private message me, whatever. But, and then go on Amazon, and the 3, if you put my name in, Charlie Gindele, they're on there.
Yeah, we encourage folks to check out your books, that's for sure. And we'll put all that information in the show notes as well to make it available and handy for everybody. So, hey, guys, I think we all got our challenge words in. Good job. Ryan, and I didn't really tell the audience we were doing challenge words, but I think they're used to it by now. Ryan, your challenge word to work into the conversation was?
Orthodontist.
You did a good job with that. Charlie, you got yours in a little bit later, but you got it in there. Your word was?
Well, you guys are professionals. You know how to do this. Anyway, mine was thermostat. I'm not sure if it was in the best context that I put it in there, but I did utter that word.
It was perfect.
No, I think we both kind of learned that, I just want to get this done with, so we try to figure out how to do it early.
It's usually not that early.
Yeah, no, it
usually doesn't happen that quick.
Yeah. My word was peculiar. I got it in there as well. So, Charlie, thank you again for being with us. It's been a pleasure, and it's going to be a great episode. I know our listeners will enjoy it. Thank you.
Todd, my pleasure. Ryan, thank you both, and enjoyed the conversation. And I'll see you in St. Louis in a couple weeks.
See you soon at the Dave Yoho, what does he call it? Mastering Profit show or something.
Something like that, yeah.
But, looking forward to it. Well, thank you to our audience for tuning into this episode of Construction Disruption with home improvement industry veteran and legend, Charlie Gindele. Please watch for future episodes of our podcast. We're always blessed to have great guests just like Charlie. Don't forget to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or give us a thumbs up on YouTube. Until the next time we're together, though, keep on disrupting things, keep on challenging the others in your world and yourself to better ways of doing things. And don't forget to leave a positive impact on everyone you encounter. Make them smile, encourage them. Simple yet powerful things we can all do to change the world. So God bless and take care. This is Isaiah Industries signing off. Until the next episode of Construction Disruption.
This podcast is produced by Isaiah Industries, manufacturer of specialty metal roofing and other building products.